Alex Hormozi has made no secret of sharing his YouTube advice. However, he continues to commit many terrible YouTube sins, and I'll be going through 5 of the worst, starting with his video's packaging. Let's talk about titles and thumbnails. Alex's are frankly terrible. They offer no explanation of what the video is about, leaving viewers disinterested or confused. And it gets even worse, because while targeting an extremely broad business audience, he regularly tells viewers to create titles that align with the actual content, rather than vague descriptions.
The difference between these two thumbnails is going from vague to clear. If I said, what is the video on the left about? You'd probably be like, a rule? Not sure. What's the video on the right, the yellow background video? If I were to describe it, I'd probably say a map or a blueprint or schematics of some sort that go from 0 to 1,000,000. Okay.
He clearly doesn't implement this himself. Purely from our titles and thumbnails, it should be clear to a potential viewer what topics are covered in the video, what structure or format the video is in, and the emotions shown in the video. Hormozi's vague thumbnails clearly break these promises by not setting the viewer clear expectations of what the video is actually about. Time and time again, I've been disappointed after clicking on a Hormozi video, only to find that the advice is completely unapplicable to me. And I'm not the only one who shares this sentiment. If we look at his comments, you'll see the same said by many of his viewers. But that doesn't even compare to how bad his next crime is. But before we go on to that, why should you listen to me? Well, for the same reason some of the world's largest brands and the world's most followed influencers trust me with their YouTube strategies. You can see some of their names on screen now. I've helped gain over 2.7 billion views purely through long form and over 45 million subscribers. But now back to Hormozi, because we haven't even started yet. Meet Biaheza. He is a former dropshipping creator who has sold tens of millions of dollars of dropshipping courses. Now, this is the type of content he produced. There were challenges. Purely speaking, this falls under the entertainment bucket.
I want to try to buy a failed $1 million business and then see if by implementing some new strategies, we can maybe revive it to its former glory.
Now let's look at Charlie Morgan. His most popular videos, as you can see on screen, are clearly packaged in a way that describes them as entertainment. But with only 100,000 subscribers, Charlie Morgan has made over $30 million, primarily through YouTube. Now, Alex regularly claims that entertainment audiences are harmful if you're trying to sell an educational product and that they do not convert.
On one extreme, you've got entertainment. The only point of the entertainment is to just get people to consume it. That's it. If it accomplishes that, it has succeeded. On the other side, you have education. And so I actually have videos in all 3 buckets, is that I'm going all in on education. Entertainment people want more entertainment content. And education people want more, say it with me, education content. And so in other words, these people do not become these people.
But that is an absolute misconception, as these two creators show. To get any viewer to watch until the end of the video, you need some aspects of entertainment content. But even formats with their roots in entertainment can be exceptional tools at educating. If you ask anyone who used to watch Biaheza, they'll tell you that they've learned an insane amount from watching his videos. There are many examples of these creators who have been massively successful business-wise, selling educational products, but creating formats which Hormozi would describe as entertainment. The distinction between the two isn't as black and white as Hormozi describes. A challenge is simply a story. And so are many of Hormozi's videos. They have a clear storyline. The story is rooted in a transformation, so I'm not sure why Hormozi is so comfortable making the distinction that you should not create entertainment content. Now, each of these sins gets progressively greater. I actually can't believe the last piece of advice we have in this video. It is mind-blowing that people would believe it. But our next one is to do with audience targeting. While Hormozi regularly makes the claim that he's trying to target business owners focused on growth, why is it that 90% of his recent videos are targeted towards either tiny business owners or complete beginners who want to get rich quick? But with this said, this is from someone who regularly champions that he'd prefer to have a smaller, engaged, recurring audience rather than focusing on low quality new viewers. Now, for this reason, I do not understand Hormozi's decisions. But if he's optimizing to actually add value where it matters, value which is leveraged by having existing businesses implement his solutions, then his approach is entirely wrong. Many of these instances are more so cases where Hormozi is hypocritical. He has stated one thing but does another, and I would have no issue with him if he followed the advice which he preaches. But some of his advice is downright terrible, such as this one about using RPM. So if you're not already familiar with this piece of advice, first off, RPM, or revenue per mil, is the amount of revenue YouTube pays you through running ads on your content per 1,000 views. And Hormozi claims that your RPM is one of the most valuable metrics for you to look over to judge the quality of your audience and make sure you're targeting the correct people.
Who uses, be honest, everybody's like, likes don't, you can't trade likes for paying rent, you can't pay payroll with views. Sure, okay, got it. Who here actually tracks something besides views? Let me say it again. Who makes views the most important metric you track? All right, we thought views, and that was the only metric we had, but we had to have something to counter it, because otherwise then you get views for views' sake. But we needed a quality metric with a quantity metric. And I just didn't know enough about media to find out what our paired metric was. And this happens to be a single metric that pairs both. And so it takes account the quality of the audience, which for me was business owners who have amongst the highest spending power. And so RPMs are the highest. And so that's why we switched from views being the metric that we're optimizing for to ad revenue.
Perhaps Hormozi can blame this piece of advice for the targeting of his recent videos. The issue here actually comes from how RPM is calculated. Your RPM is influenced by numerous variables, as any YouTube creator can tell you. For example, channels under 2 years old will see a far lower RPM purely because of their channel age. YouTube wants to build trust with a creator, and once they have, they'll increase their RPM. But there are many other factors, such as ad suitability. Literally, the words you say in your video can affect the RPM, because certain higher paying advertisers may not want to touch your content. Even your video length massively changes your RPM, and not by a little bit, by literal multiples. I've seen videos have 10 times greater RPM than the channel's average purely because it was a longer video, meaning the creator can run more adverts on it. So as you can clearly see, RPM varies massively, 2x or 3x, or even 5 or 10 times greater. So from this alone, you should clearly be able to see how poor of an indicator this could be for anything, let alone audience quality. If you're making decisions based on this massively varying number, you're going to have a very hard time getting any data out of them. Things like viewing your attention when you say certain pieces of advice, or by asking people you know who fit within your total addressable market what their thoughts on your video are, and whether they've been watching your channel lately, is a far greater indicator. Relying solely on RPM is terrible advice and will lead you astray. Now, there is a hint of truth in Hormozi's statement that most YouTube metrics are plainly noise, so you should definitely prioritize the external metrics which mean more to you than things like views or average view duration, click-through rate. Whatever your call to action is, just measure the number of times your call to action has been triggered by someone who qualifies for whatever you're promoting. And now to Hormozi's greatest and final sin, which is this claim he made, which blows my mind every time I see it. Alex has regularly claimed that you should focus on consistency over perfection. Now, while consistency is important for reasons which I'll explain in a second, strategy is what is paramount. Now, let's begin with an example. I'm currently working with a gaming channel. The channel is called Blue, and they have 1.8 million subscribers and growing by around 100,000 subscribers per month. Now, really recently, we managed to get an increase in viewership when we dropped our weekly number of uploads down from 11 to just 6. So to recap, by halving the number of uploads and not really changing much else, we managed to increase our viewership. Now, why is this? Well, due to the competition on the platform, YouTube has a lot of competition, and by making low effort content, anyone can compete with that. Now, this doesn't mean your content has to be perfect, it can be far from it, but as long as you inject what makes you unique, certain combination of resource advantages and of specific knowledge advantages. Hormozi is nearly a billionaire, and for this reason, he has a very unique perspective on business which he can share, and he also has an amazing way of articulating himself. This makes him fit his format perfectly. Nobody else can create this type of content even if they wanted to, because they do not have Hormozi's specific knowledge. But there are also resource advantages which you can use, and these are all relative to your competition. For example, MrBeast can put in more money than his competition can, therefore creating content which is impossible for them to create. He also has a greater team to manage every other aspect of his business, allowing him to put more of his personal time into his content. This is also something which many other creators don't have, as their channels rely on them. By figuring out your resource advantages and specific knowledge advantages, you need to use these in every piece of your content. Now, if posting too frequently is stopping you from being able to do this, that is a massive problem. problem. Every piece of content you create needs to be unique to you, something which only you can make, otherwise it's serving no value on the platform. This doesn't mean it has to be perfect in terms of production quality or any other meaningless metric. It just needs to be unique to you. Therefore, it serves some definition of an audience in a way that's different or better than they're currently being served. There's a reason why MrBeast, from posting one video per week, has grown to be the largest channel in the platform, while there are channels who have been doing daily vlogs for several years and we do not even know their names. Quality absolutely trumps quantity, and for this matter, consistency. If you have an amazing idea but it will hinder your production schedule to get it out, you shouldn't drop it entirely. Hormozi has never even mentioned these points, and many of these pieces of advice are things I discovered the hard way really early on when working with YouTube creators. Now, I believe it's really important to practice what you preach. I love a lot of the advice Hormozi gives, but these 5 sins are unforgivable. Now, if you want to see my entire YouTube framework, I'm actually giving it away for free. Just click the link in the description. See you soon.